and welcome to Story Radio, the podcast for readers, writers, and lovers of short stories everywhere. Today we're listening to The Edge, part of a series of location-based pieces exploring the stories and power of landscape. It's written, produced, and read by Martin Nathan.
The cliffs at Beachy Head peak at 530 feet, and they draw visitors from far and wide, pulled here by the expanse of sea and sky. The vast block of dazzling chalk is kept white by its crumbling. Many comment on a feeling of sadness about the place despite its beauty. Perhaps the constant collapse of the cliffs reminds us of our own transience. Along the cliff top are remembrance markers for those who have ended their days here. These too will eventually be part of the collapse. Some people have talked of a malevolent presence on the cliff tops of Beachy Head. Practice. Wind snapped rope against mast. A woman tucked her hair back under her scarf as if a grey curl flapping loose in the wind might shock us. A plaque on the cabin said something about our boat in Dunkirk, and its beams creaked. As we approached the lighthouse, the captain told us it was no longer manned, but controlled remotely. Like me, he said, and we laughed at his joke. Then someone shouted, and we all rushed starboard with our cameras. Two figures winched a third down the cliff face to a rescue, with chalk and grass tufts falling where his feet touched the cliff. The captain announced in two voices, tannoy and direct, that this was not a real rescue, but just a practice, and I stopped filming. He turned up the radio, Elton John on crackly speakers, and I wondered how he knew, whether Crocodile Rock was a coded message like Inspector Sands in the theatre. We too could have known it was just a preparation for the real event.
A pile of clothing on the top of Beachy Head led to the discovery of the tragedy, and it was alleged by the lady with whom he had been lodging that the religious mania from which he had been suffering was brought on by his association with the Four Square Gospel movement. It was impossible to complete a task of bringing the body on a stretcher to Eastbourne, owing to the danger of being cut off by the incoming tide. Mr. Hartfield could not recall how many times he has been over the cliff since he came to Beachy Head. In round figures, it is about 20.
Some people have talked of a malevolent presence on the cliff tops at Beachy Head. A misty figure floats over the edge, beckoning walkers to follow. There have been tales of encounters with a black hooded figure who keeps his face hidden as he points over the edge, and his observers find themselves locked in a battle of wills, dropping them ever forwards. We've logged reports of a grey woman in Victorian clothes carrying a baby in her arms, walks over the cliff, only falling many yards beyond the current edge, as if remembering a fall from an earlier time. As if remembering a fall from an earlier time. Mist. The cliff top is fringed with curls of dawn mist, and finding a refillable water bottle and a sandal with a broken strap, I think of Empedocles jumping into Mount Etna, a demonstration of his immortality. and the volcano swallowed him up, but spat out his sandals to demonstrate otherwise. In my cupboard, I keep 3 odd sea shoes, convinced that one day their partners will return.
Beachy Head Landing, Birling Gap. Beachy Head Landing. On April 4th, the dangerous rock at Beachy Head, known as the Pinnacle, was climbed for the first time by Mr. Aleister Crowley and a friend, both members of the Alpine Club. The route chosen was from the east side. In places, the climbers found it necessary to cut steps with an ice axe. The chalk was everywhere very loose, and the climb proved most difficult and dangerous.
A strip of orange vinyl flaps in the wind, snagged on a groin bolt from days before patrols. All I want is to see. The waves are, the wind is. On shingle you found footfall, footprints deep. In the chalk cave wall you scratched your name to stay forever. A distant cliff, white like marble, white like covered skin, white like foaming waves. Vinyl hooked by black lines through plastic hoops, a label flapping, a product suitable, levels 1 and 2, inland sheltered waters, slow running rivers, a distant cliff, and twigs move, large wavelets with scattered white horses, white like a strip of fabric torn from paradise.
Aleister Crowley, whose mother declared him the Great Beast and the most evil man on earth, wrote of his passion for Beachy Head. The climb was rated 5.9 to 5.10, and his successful ascent was considered to be due to his tolerance of high levels of risk for himself and others. Besides his interest in black magic and rituals involving sex, violence and animal sacrifice, he worked for several years as chess correspondent of the Eastbourne Gazette.
Tell us. I can hear you, yes. Tell us what happened here. Tell us what happened. Fire.
Car parts. Comrades, wheel hubs, Morris Traveller, a mini clubman, he recognised those parts. Amongst the lumps of chalk, pitted with 100-year-old holes, limpet acid digging deep. A leathery creature lay putrid, shriveled with lines of teeth, long gaping grin linking human and sea creature. A gearbox held an airbag flapping, a camshaft from a Citroen DX. They go on forever, he said, the DX, those everlasting fragments of cars driven over the edge. But now the debris does not linger to form rust trails from crumpled car fronts shiny with sprinkled glass. It is cleared fast, so they avoid wasted effort trying to save lives already lost, and remove the temptation to explore where the cliff edge lies.
The motorist who drove his car to within 10 yards of the cliff edge of Beachy Head was summoned on Monday. When the police sergeant told him he would be summoned, he said there are other cars down there and pointed in the direction of Beltoot. A fine of 20 shillings was imposed. Passengers in the airliner Cilia had a perfect view of a waterspout in the channel 5 miles southwest of Beachy Head. It is estimated that the waterspout was 2,000 feet high and it was visible for 10 minutes. A holiday's a mistake? Yes, replied Miss Watson. I must say that I enjoy the best of health now, though my long holiday at the seaside had nothing to do with my healthy appearance. It is only a short time since I looked like one going into consumption, and it seemed as if nothing would do me any good. Local clergy and members of the public are interested in the claim by a Brighton medium following a séance at Beachy Head late on Saturday night that the cliff edge has now been exorcised and is free of an evil spirit. Ray Dovesky chose a spot near the Devil's Chimney as one of evil influence. He went into a trance and eventually had to be restrained from forcing himself off to the cliff edge.
Spring flowers. Now he is old, with the time and means to take the photographs he never could. During long days spent sorting claims, the embellished misfortunes filling box D, until he sank into his own tragic story. He watches landscapes crumble by month and by day. His concern is now for exposure, as he captures trefoil and bugloss in sharp resolution. Behind them, the downs fall away into blur, the chalk lumps strewn around, as if from the tantrums of an angry child. His grey hair hangs low, lips tighten over broken teeth, as he aims his clouded lens at the spring flowers just past their peak.
Tell us. I can hear you, yes. Tell us what happened. Tell us what happened. Fire.
Silence. You wanted to escape the sound of phones playing noises once considered humorous. Sheep baaing, chickens clucking, a polite cough. You cringed with these sounds, wanting to hear only seagulls, the wind, waves crashing and sucking through pebbles, until the noise overwhelmed you. We tiptoed around you in slippered feet, and I'd scaffolded as anxious not to disturb a neighbourhood sleeper, with a complaint letter penned ready. You divided your music between Oxfam and the Deaf Society. 6 carrier bags tapes of Morton Feldman, Cage and Nankaro. Then you drove up the coast road with a tartar thermos and a cracked cup to listen to music so slow and intense that there was no place to come back to. Just silence.
Save you. happened? Fire?
Moon. Surfers battle with spring tide. The wind brings waves crashing, and the surfers waiting for the right curl. I was swimming raised high with the swell, then dropped down, surrounded by a wall of water, held, not moving forward or back, drawn with each surge so easy to let go, the pull of the water. Moons can have their own moons which orbit them, moons waxing and waning to moonbound observers. And fragments orbit these so the inhabitants can find themselves stranded by the pull of forces only they can feel beneath them, as the waves pull them back, never let them land.
There were persistent rumours that Aleister Crowley left talismans embedded in the cliffs at Devil's Chimney, and that these were responsible for Beachy Head's association with darker forces. Crowley claimed that if Devil's Chimney ever fell, these cursed objects would ensure the destruction of the town. The chimney's collapse was inevitable though, and it fell in 2001. A number of talismanic items were recovered from its rubble. A local exorcist held a ritual he'd devised to lift the curse. The town remained standing.
A seagull chick fell in the garden, and it stared indignantly at me as it banged its beak on the window, making me fearful that I would become imprinted as its adopted parent. So I hid from it till morning. I approached to attempt rescue and it cowered from me. I covered its head with a tea towel and its warm body stiffened, heart racing under the cage of its ribs as I carried it out to the front. And it swaggered away down the road facing foxes, cars, other gulls and people. Today, a year later, a seagull came and tapped on the window once again, and I wondered if it was the same bird banging that glass, returning to its lost parent. Then I moved the jug away from the windowsill with its painted images of fish.
Some time ago it was suggested that the evil spirit which had lured people to their doom should be exorcised, and a ceremony of sorts was held. However, the toll of those who saw the head as a means of their ending has grown just the same.
The power of God. But who were these people of Beachy Head? And what power did they invoke? Was it their own power? Or was it the power of God?
He walks the cliff. A yellow sunny Walkman bangs on his thigh, Bach plays in his ear. A seagull hangs in the wind, wings static except to fold a tip, to rise and fall. He remembers the nurse who told him she used to be a bunny girl, as she redressed wounded wrists. Why not, she said. Playboy Club. Hospitals, it's all just bodies. She gave him a copy of Jonathan Livingston's Seagull, which had helped her in rough times. Now, as he walks the cliffs, he thinks of that book, how he read 5 pages and could read no more. Ich habe genug. I have had enough. He stops to waver in the wind on the cliff top. By Holywell, you could still see the remains of the fishing village, abandoned to allow the development of the water source and the extraction of mineral deposits. The remains a story that the fishermen's wives sold their cottages while the fishermen were at sea, and the husbands returned to find their village abandoned. Trust. In the distance, the lighthouse floats in a mist, its base vanished, waiting to be shifted again, away from the cliff edge, far enough for another 30 years of collapse. The cracks open up, the chalk separating viper's pupils from devil's bit scabious. A couple stand too close to the edge. He holds her hand as she leans forward, looking down at the chalk piles of previous collapses, some old and greening, others fresh white, and she laughs through her fear, then falls back into his arms to be caught again and again. I will never let you down. I remember the story of the couple playing trust on the cliff top. Walkers stopped to watch them as she stepped forwards, eyes closed, heard his instructions carried by the wind. If you love me, you'll trust me. Forward 2 steps, turn left 5 steps, as he directed her over the edge.
Saturday, roadsides are 6 hours later. Today, 9:06 a.m., 9:45 p.m. Sunday, 9:47 a.m., 10:21 p.m. Monday, 10:25 a.m., 10:53 p.m. Tuesday, 10:59 a.m., 10:25 p.m. Wednesday, 10:29 a.m., 11:54 p.m. Thursday, 12:01.
When you stand, she held her drink. At that point, her hand trembled. The sea is on 3 sides. She said she loved the sea glints, to walk there on waves, across those hills, topped by foam, like a paradise behind you and in front of scrawweed and cuckoo spit. Call me, she said. The air chills. When you arrive, as the sun drops, we will walk the cliff top, too fast, as far as the steps, red beams cutting. But when I do, into the sea, her phone rings forever as it drags below the horizon, and her brother, look away, cannot meet my eye, no matter how it feels, leaves me to read the news, standing on the cliff top. In the local paper, you glimpse paradise. On thy stupendous summit, rocks sublime, as o'er the Jammu reared halfway at sea, the manna at early morning hails I should recline, while fancy should go forth and represent the strange and awful hour of vast concussion, when the Omnipotent stretched forth his arm and rent the solid hills, bidding the impetuous main flood rush between the rifted shores, and from the continent eternally divide this green isle, imperial lord of the high southern coast. From thy projecting headland I would mark, far in the east, the shades of night disperse, melting and thinned as from the dark blue wave. Emerging brilliant rays of arrowy light dart from the horizon when the glorious sun that just lifts above it is resplendent.
Hello, and welcome to Story Radio, the podcast for readers, writers, and lovers of short stories everywhere. Today, we're listening to The Edge, part of a series of location-based pieces exploring the stories and power of landscape. It's written, produced, and read by Martin Nathan.